This is Kristi Bridges, and I have another friend of mine with me today. Today is the day for friends, man. I have Rachel Toops. She is a skincare designer, and she has been in the cosmetology industry forever. Did my makeup in the last photo shoot that we did, and she has created her own bath scrub. You've got to love that. And her own salve that you can use for pain and muscle relaxant. And anyway, she is going to be asking me some questions that you might have. I'm always interviewing other people. And so this past week, I was talking to some friends and said, well, does anybody else have questions about me? And they said, well, yes. And I said, okay, let's do this. So a little nervous, but that's all right because Rachel is always easy to talk to. Rachel, thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I can't wait to see what transpires out of this and learning more about you and your community as well. So I'm excited.
Nice. So before we start with me, I'm curious. Tell me what makes your body scrub and your salve special. I know there's a secret ingredient.
Love.
Love. Okay, gotcha. Rachel,
When the South they call it putting your foot in it, I would say put my foot in it. That's all.
I love it. So Rachel uses fresh herbs in all of her stuff. That is really neat.
Yes. I have been, in more of the natural side of cosmetics for over 20 years. And so I've learned a lot about ingredients and the things that are not good for us, that is in everything. And so for me, I want my products to be as natural as they can be. But, we still need a little science with nature for things to work well and be able to actually penetrate our skin and things. So, yeah, that's me. I like something a little bit more natural from the earth, organic. So,
Gotcha. With a little science. I like that because natural doesn't always give you consistency. So you've actually applied your chemistry skills to this stuff. And that's neat for me. I'm like, oh, I know a real scientist.
I try.
All
Well,
right.
my dad
Yeah.
is a soil scientist. So I grew up in the greenhouse. I grew up learning about herbs and plants. He's the guy that, you can look at a leaf and he knows the origin and everything behind it. So it's kind of interesting learning from him and, still being able to apply those to my own business now. So it's good.
Very nice. Okay. So I guess it's your turn.
Okay. So we've gotten to know each other a little bit in, the past few months, which is so much fun. I love, every time we get together. But I want to know a little bit about what made you, what is your story that got you to the place of where you now give yourself so freely and want to help children and do all the things that you do in coaching with your bedtime, your 3 a.m. stories and all of that. Is it 2 a.m. or 3 a.m.?
3 a.m.
Okay, 3 a.m. And so I'd like to know a little bit more about like what was it that jump started you to want to do that for others?
Oh. You know, back when I was 10 years old, I spent the summer with my grandparents, like I did every year. And my mom gave me an assignment. I was going to spend the month of July with them. And she said, there's 31 days in July. Every day, I want you to read a chapter of Proverbs because there's 31 chapters in Proverbs.
Yes.
And I was 10. I didn't get it all, right? I could see the rationale in, you know, certain things, right? But I didn't get it all because I wasn't a grown up.
Right.
But it got me started trying to figure out grown-ups. It got me started thinking in a different way. And my parents especially my dad, because I was spending the summer with my grandparents so I could be close to my dad. And watching him in his relationships and in his personal development through the years, I got to, be privy to all the mistakes he made and also the wisdom that he shared as he learned from them. He was a real young dad. He was, 17 when I was born. And I really think that was a big inspiration for me, because getting to watch someone grow firsthand and getting to see God's way show itself, right? The Bible is full of advice for how to live with peace and how to live with wisdom and how to avoid some of these terrible traumas and how to recover from them. And getting to kind of, continue learning from scripture and at the same time watching someone discover the truth there was an eye opener. When I was 25, I discovered an author. I was going through my own divorce, which is the reason that I'm doing the 3 a.m. book. And at that time, I was recognizing, oh, what a sweetie, that I love him. He's beautiful. But at that time, I realized, I didn't have it all right. I thought I, had learned everything from dad and I wouldn't make any mistakes, and I was very wrong. And I thought, one of these days I want to write a book. I want to help other people learn what I learned from dad and what I learned from my own life. I want to help other people avoid those mistakes and also heal when they've made them. And so it was I knew that I wasn't at the maturity level yet. I knew I still had some things to learn. But it was about, 15 years later when I wrote my first book, based on Proverbs, and actually used some of Dad's stories. And I've been doing this kind of thing ever since. I am just driven to help people understand themselves better and understand God better and understand each other, so that we can have much, much happier lives.
That's so awesome. I love that because, my dad, I told you a little bit of that, but his story is so much of what I do too, because, and even, Father's Day, just, last weekend. And I got this huge card from my dad, and it was basically like I wrote this, novel. And, we went through some really hard things. My dad's been sober for 28 years, but he's overcome so many things. I mean, I've seen him overcome in his health and grow in his business. And, he's worked for every major agricultural and horticultural company. He's just thrived, and I've seen restoration in my own family. And that's how I know, like, because of watching my parents both do it, apart from, being together. And my mom's been single for 20 years, as long as my dad's been sober. Yeah. And so, but they've both like just blossomed. And that's such a testimony, to us generationally, healing, like you said, those things that our parents had to go through. And, my mom and I, we still catch ourselves sometimes apologizing for the past and then having to be like, no, we don't have to say sorry anymore. We've already buried that, and then, but rewriting that script, I love that. That's amazing.
Getting to see that God really makes transformation. You don't get that unless you have long-term relationships. And, our parents are probably the best source of that, but some people aren't in touch with their parents, and you can miss things that way. Sometimes it's for healthy reasons, right? You got to take care of yourself. But long-term relationships are the way you get to really see God work, the way you get to really see wisdom transform a life. And I'm so glad that you and your dad and you and your mom have been able to, share that experience together.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a blessing, it really is, and some people who can ever see, that what I see, what is it in Asian countries and like China where they have a broken pot and they fill it with gold to
Yes.
make it whole. My life motto, what I've always kind of like, started happening years ago through, my journey and my spiritual journey, my healing journey. And I remember think like God telling me like you're a broken piece of glass transformed into a beautiful stained glass artwork. And that's he makes beauty out of brokenness. And so yeah, I love I love that analogy. So
He
so true.
does. That is the entire topic of Option Ocean, is just how wonderfully he does that. He takes these shattered things, these misshapen, sharp edged, crumbled pieces of what once were, and he goes, "Oh, I can work with this and make something amazing." What a neat analogy. I love the stained glass. I love stained glass anyway, so that's such a perfect.
So pretty.
Right? I want to take a stained glass class. Let's do
You
it.
know what? I thought about that. Taking like they have one here in Tulsa where
Yes.
they do stained glass art and then glass blowing too. So
I totally want to do that.
I
Although
know
that's
that'd be a good
looks like
skill set.
very sweaty work.
Right. Let's not do it right now this summer.
No, let's wait till my birthday. It's in December.
When's
Nice
your
and chilly.
birthday?
It's right after Christmas, so it'll be nice and cold for it.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So your birthday is in December?
Yes, it's December 29th, right between Christmas and New Year's. And it's funny, people always think that with a Christmas birthday, you don't get your own celebration. But
You
it's
do.
really special to me because there's something profound about recognizing that Jesus, God, right, poured as much of his essence as he could into a human body. And that human body, Jesus, went through having to learn how to talk. I mean, he was the word, but he had to learn how to talk. He had to learn how to use that tongue and those teeth properly to make himself understood. He had to learn he had to grow in teeth, right? That's a painful process. Right off the bat, boom, your first experience being human. Everybody loves you, and then you hurt all the time.
Yeah.
You know? And then
Everything you do hurts all the time. You're hurting.
and so
Love
then
back.
we went through all these things that we go through, and something about getting having that birthday that's right about the same time as when we celebrate his, just always makes it feel so special.
Yeah, James's birthday is the 10th, so his is right before Christmas. We
Before
have a lot of
everybody starts the wild parties and
yeah,
he has
before
time. Yes.
yeah. And then my grandmother, hers is she's a New Year's baby, so hers is actually New Year's Eve, which has always been
Seriously?
fun.
Okay, that's fun. The
Yeah, it's fun. It's always fun. I
whole
remember
world
one
throws
year
a party.
we played Clue. It was supposed to be Y2K. Remember Y2K and everything
Yep.
was supposed to die. And we
So
were
you're doing
playing
board
Clue
games
and like
because
Uno and Skip Bo all through it. And they're like, well, it's midnight. Guess we didn't lose anything.
right? How funny.
Oh, so yeah. So, so I want to know about this book, this 3 a.m. You told me about the oceans one. What about this 3 a.m. book, this new one that you have?
I'm getting excited about it. So 2 years ago, I never make a project wait this long, but 2 years ago, I finally felt ready to do a devotional for people going through divorce. So, 25 years after my divorce, um, I'm finally ready, right? But it's not something you want to. It's not something you want to deal with immediately because you don't really know what you don't know yet. And it's then once you've dealt with your own divorce and you've recovered and started that new life, you really don't want to go back and relive it all. And so it took a while, but a couple of years ago I was just walking through Mardell's, and I love Mardell's, but there was one book on grief that had a chapter on divorce, and there was one book for help counseling people who are, during marital splits. And there was just such a wealth of, you know, ditch that man, you're better off kind of books in the secular world. But in the Christian world, even though Christians go through divorce just as often as other people, probably more because we actually get married, right?
Well, and then, there was the purity, the whole purity culture too. And,
Yeah.
all these kids getting married and then they're getting divorced because they didn't know, they didn't know someone long enough, and they were,
Yeah.
have a total misconception of relationships.
So true. And so I just thought, gosh, we need this. And so I gathered some authors, some really amazing people with a good perspective to share their own stories. And because, nobody wants to spend 30 days reading about mine. But they each wrote their own chapter and shared their own stories. And I shared some of mine, and along with scripture and wisdom, lessons learned, right? So that when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you can't sleep because your mind won't stop and you're ready to pick up the phone and text that ex, you can do something else. Um, Anything else, right? You can pick up that book and read somebody's story and get a little hope and know you're going to get through this. And so from
Like
there,
chicken soup for the divorced soul. The
right,
divorced soul.
exactly. And we're sharing, what we've learned. I'm still looking for about 3 more authors to really round out the book. There are particular things I want people to have in their toolbox, right? So there are about 3 more authors I'm looking for. And I'm gathering therapists also to share with me this September in the 3 a.m. Surviving Divorce Summit. So the therapists will share different types of tips. I actually have therapists and a financial planner who's going to, because after my divorce, I ended up in bankruptcy because I didn't have my brain on straight and, didn't make good financial decisions. And so we're going to have a financial planner. We're going to have some therapists. That'll be in September during Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month because divorce is a major influence in suicide for men. Um, you'd think that women, you know, might go there, but a lot of women have a better network
Yeah.
than men do. A lot of men only have their families, and even if they take those families for granted, um, they end up really desolate afterwards. And so, I think it's going to be important for us to help men and women understand that you may not have asked for this new life. This may not be what you wanted, but it is here and it's actually going to be good if you just let God lead you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
It's so
excited.
true. I'm excited for you. It's so good. My mother, I told you she's been single for a long time. Her therapist, when she first, my parents first got divorced, because they were together like 18 years, I think, altogether. And my mom's therapist said, my mom's like, how long is this going to take me to get through this, And her therapist said, it'll take you about the same amount of time that you were in it. And my mom's
Oh
like,
my
there's
goodness.
no way I'm doing that.
Oh
And
wow.
so year 18, she said about year 18 is when she was like, you know what, I think I'm good. Like there's something in her was like, oh, like a light had, something had just
Wow.
leveled. And so she does everything on her own. I mean, my dad taught her so many wonderful things when they were married because my dad and my mom and dad had a landscaping business when I was little, and plants always been in them. And my mom, she went through bankruptcy. She lost everything at
Mm.
50 years old,
Oh,
and lived with a friend of hers. It was supposed to be 6 months, ended up being like 6.5 years.
oh
And yeah,
wow.
and she had to pay it back. It was because she got involved with the realtor, and the broker like screwed her and
Aw.
left. My mom was left with all the baggage. And so she had to learn everything all over again. This is after my parents were already divorced and everything,
Yeah.
in the middle of her healing process. But, she kept saying every day, bloom where you're planted, bloom where you're planted. And, she has done that. And I've watched that process of healing. And, had my own as well. Having to, leave relationships, friendships, all of that, grief, can be not just divorce, but also friendships. That's something that God has really shown me this last year is friendships and how many people actually show up, or who are not as invested. And so that's another, hard one is, what I'm thankful for with you and, with the group and everything is the sisterhood and the friendships.
Yes.
And all of us are so different, but we all have that
It's
core
true.
faith, that core belief,
Yeah.
and, that sisterhood. And it's amazing. It really is because, a friend of mine, he's a spiritual dad of mine. He lives in Washington. And when I first moved back to Oklahoma 3 years ago, almost, he was praying for me, prophetically, and told me, you are coming into a season where you will be with your remnant family. And I feel like that is here. I was gone from Oklahoma for 15 years, and I said I was never coming back. And here I
Right.
said, so yeah, it's amazing what God can do. Like you said, it took 25 years, but look where you are now, So sometimes it's just those little, steps of faith, doing the next thing that he says. And then it all makes that big picture.
I want to just reverse a little bit and dwell on that. I so respect your mother and her intention to bloom where she was planted. Um, I mean, when I was, when my husband left, my first husband, I felt like all my plans, all my future, all my identity had just driven off in our new car, right? And it's so true. You may not be choosing where you are at the moment, but you still have you. You still have all of the growth that you did during the time you were together. You might have some baggage to work through too, but
Right.
you still have all the growth. There were still things. I had a deeper relationship with Jesus because of my first marriage. I had a heightened awareness of my own responsibility to design my life when my ex drove up and he was no longer directing us, right? There were certain things that I really got from that time together that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And so your mom, recognized things she got, had to deal with some baggage. I totally identify with that. And chose to bloom right, in that spot, just do what she could with what she had. And I love that. That's wonderful. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're here. You just brighten up the room. I always get a good laugh when you're around. And you're so
We got
real
sky
with,
sunshine, right? Sky
right?
sunshine.
Exactly, but you're so real too. It's not just, I'm going to entertain people. You're totally direct about who you are and where you are, and I love that. That combination is wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. I've always been the black sheep, but what I have come to learn about being that black sheep is that, uh, you know, God leaves the 99 to find the one, right? But also, like, I feel like the black sheep have a different call on their life for other lost black sheep because, growing up in the church, and my grandpa was a missionary, was a preacher, and had churches all over the world. And I feel like, church is supposed to be a hospital for the broken, not a country club for Christians.
Very true.
And so many of us like don't, you know, we're, oh, I'm in church on Sunday, but I'm having tea with God and brunch on Sunday. Well, where's your relationship the rest of the week?
Yeah,
So that's me. I'm as probably as real as they come.
I
Because
love
I can't sugarcoat anything. That's not my that's not my calling as a black sheep.
it.
I'm gonna bad different. So
Okay, that was good. No,
so
you're right
yeah.
though. Church, what was it? Church is supposed to be a hospital for the sick, right? And
Yeah.
honestly, we're God's kids. No matter how long you've been on this earth, we're still his kids. In light of eternity, we are babies and we are learning at all times. And if church is only a social club, if it's only a place you go to, see everybody else dressed up and get your own chance to dress up, whether it's
Yeah.
personality wise or
I'm sorry
clothing.
if you can hear those dings, by the way. I hope you can't hear that. Okay,
Totally
good.
can't.
My
But if it's
phone is
only one of those, then you're missing it. You're missing the chance to see wisdom in action.
right.
Jesus said, "Abide in me, and then you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free." It's about actually a relationship with God where you try what He says works, and then you say, "Wow, this works," and then you're free because you've actually seen it in action. And we could do that. We can help each other with that. When we come together real and we say, here's where my struggle is, here's what I've been doing that's right, and I want to celebrate that. And we don't do comparisons. We go, yay, you for celebrating that, and ooh, I'm so sorry about your struggle, let me pray for you. uh,
Yeah.
I love, that's what I'm really enjoying about our prosperity circle, our community.
Yeah. It's really good. Because, I feel like so many of us, and back to my friend Dan again, my spiritual dad in Washington, um, he used to talk because he's like older than my dad. He's 4 or 5 years older than my dad, but um, he would always talk about freedom, like freedom in Christ,
Mhm.
and I was in my early 20s, when I was in Washington and I met him, and we were in the same, we were on a prayer team together. And so um, it was always just so fun. God used him and during that time to really, it's like a protector over me, kind of, prayer covered me in prayer and uplifted me, wonderful things. But we got to do ministry together. And what I really learned is that freedom, not all the rules and regulations and like how I had grown up thinking, faith without works is dead and all of this, you know,
Duty.
um,
Did you have a duty mindset? Yeah,
duty.
gotcha.
Yeah, gotta do. And I
Obligation.
still to this day, if I am, and me, I am always running and gunning, like
Oh
go,
yeah.
go, 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 go. And when I'm sitting still, and we need that, like the Sabbath is important, like talked about it, taking a day for yourself and keeping it holy. And so when I do just sit still and I feel guilty a lot of times because that's ingrained in us, right? That we have to always be doing. And
Right.
so
My mom says we were made to be human beings, not human doings. I'm like, rock on.
absolutely.
I needed that, Mom. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, I love getting to know you so much, like every day, seeing your posts and just knowing that I have a sister, that is here to help too, like you are such a ray of sunshine. Like you always are so positive. I love your prayers. I love your heart. You're just so willing to always like here, let me love you. It's like you just want to like give it, take it, and take
I
every
do,
part of
right? It's fun. Once you learn that, it's just so fun.
I know
People are beautiful.
they are.
People are beautiful. And some of them will get on your last nerve, and some of them will try to suck you dry if you don't have good boundaries. But in general, I mean, you just ask God, let me see the beauty. Let me see through your eyes in this, wherever I go. And you do that, and God just starts showing you, even the people who got on your nerves the most, He'll show you like what is special about them, what is unique about them, what is different that you might need to learn. Where is the vulnerable spot that needs ministry? And it's just so neat. It's so neat to be able to see from God's perspective. Now, I tell you what, though, I'm not always, a bunch of sunshine. There are times that I'm like, surprise myself.
But in those moments when we do that, that's when you say, God, I just messed up. Like, I'm sorry. You recognize it, right? It's not
Right.
that we are, I mean, he takes us from glory to glory, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
always shaping us, right? Like it's constant. And as long as I think you're putting one foot in front of the other, doing something different every day, waking up, reading those emails. I have three every morning that I do first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
But it's, that time with God, what is he saying today? What do I need to know? What affirmation or prayer or proverb, do I need to read? And, just taking that daily, surrender, crucifying of the flesh and, becoming more like Jesus, right? That's what we're here, is to be transformed by the renewing of our mind.
Yes, that daily realignment, and
Yes.
kind of constant realignment. And you said something there. We face it. We say, "Oh, I messed up," and He leads us forward. He doesn't
Condemn us.
wait for us to wallow in shame for a little while, so that then He can go, "Well, I guess I'll carry you forward." No, He doesn't do that. He goes, "Yep, you messed up. So why do you think that was? So where are we going to go with that?" The other night, a real good example. I grew up with a lot of yelling, right? I had some really volatile people in my life growing up, and I don't live with a lot of yelling. I've refused to live in a relationship like that, period. I just don't want that. My husband's the same way. He grew up with some volatility, and so peace is big for him. And in some ways, he's definitely a little more mature than I am, because the other night, uh, he was fussing about my moonflowers. I have these gorgeous moonflowers that grow just ginormous every year. And it seems like every year there's more of them. And they kind of take over the sidewalk on the way into the door. And I'm fine, I'll step around them. And he was like, why do they have to crowd us so much? And I was just waiting until they stopped blooming to trim them back, because it tortured me to think of cutting them. And he fussed, and it like triggered something in my mind. And I was on my way to pick up this kid who's staying with us, a friend of mine. I was on my way to pick him up. And in my mind, I am seeing these crazy seeds. I'm just going to rip them up and throw them out of me, all the stuff that I wouldn't do, because that doesn't make any sense. But it's reminiscent of the kinds of things that I might have seen as a kid. And I sent him a text that was not very wise. And
You must say no more. I understand those texts.
and he responded, and he's like, I don't know what this is, but I don't deserve it. And I responded and said, you're exactly right. And I'm sorry. And then I thought about it over the next day. I'm like, my first clue should have been, this is ridiculous. Why am I getting all knotted up about this? And instead of responding, I should have addressed what was going on in my head. But I also had to go, God, help me not to do that. Help me to be quicker to recognize that this isn't the life I want to live. This isn't the person I want to be. And, it doesn't matter how long we work on ourselves. It doesn't matter. Oops. She disappeared. She'll be back. But it doesn't. It doesn't matter how long we work on ourselves. There's going to be some little things that occasionally crop up. And we have to go, I'm going to address this differently. I'm going to grow from this point. And we don't have to wallow, and we don't have to think, oh, I'll never change. God will take care of us. So I have lost my buddy, but that was Rachel Toops interviewing me, and I'm so grateful for her friendship. And she is really neat lady on her own. So you should look her up. I'll put a link in the chat so that you can find her. But she has her own body scrubs, her own salve that is just wonderful for pain relief and pretty much anything you need a salve for. And she's actually continuing to develop products. So you definitely want to know what else she comes up with. I'll post those in the chat, and I really appreciate everyone who's been here today. God bless you. If you have a question for me, I would love to hear it. If you have a prayer request, I would love to hear that too, because I'd like to pray for you. And join me Monday through Friday for the 2-minute daily devotions on One Moment Wiser. That's the number 1 moment wiser. Thank you so much. God bless you. Bye-bye.